Welcome to the Jeff Crilley Show. And now, here's Jeff Crilley.
Good Saturday morning, everyone. I'm Jeff Crilley, and we've got a great show. And we're starting off with a subject that I think every parent can relate to. It's the education system and a new global movement that is sweeping the planet. It's called positive education. My first guest is Emily Larson. She is with the International Positive Education Network, IPEN for short. Emily,
Hi,
welcome.
Jeff. Thanks for having me here today.
Well, when we talk about positive education, what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, it's a great first question. So positive education is really simple. We believe that education should be for the whole child. And currently, I think that the education system is just educating them for academic success. So we call it a double helix model of education. So one strand is we should definitely be teaching academics to students, but the second strand is really character and well-being. So how can we educate students to have the life skills like resilience, grit, character, gratitude that they really need to succeed inside and outside the classroom?
Absolutely, and I think that's been a big criticism of the education system here in America is that we're teaching kids how to pass a test, but they know nothing about life, and when they get out there in the real world, sometimes they struggle.
Exactly.
And you have a festival coming up here.
We do have a festival, so this will actually be taking place in Dallas, July 18th to the 20th at the Intercontinental Hotel in Addison. And this is actually the world's largest festival on positive education. So we're going to have around 800 to 1,000 people there, and really world leaders all the way from policymakers to practitioners and researchers and even parents and teachers as well. So this will be the first time that all these people are together in the same room having a united conversation about what the future of education looks like.
How did this movement start?
Yeah, so Martin Seligman is the founder of positive psychology, and he works at the University of Pennsylvania. So Martin Seligman had a meeting with Lord James O'Shaughnessy, who was working for the Prime Minister in the UK at the time. And they were discussing, what does education look like? What should it look like? What are we preparing our students for? And what came out of this was they decided to bring together 30 of the world's leaders in positive psychology and education for a 3-day summit in 2013. And they realized two things. The first was something I already touched on, that despite the location that they were coming from, we had people from all over the world. And despite the kind of name that they call it, so you'll hear people saying SEL, so socio-emotional learning. Some people call it character education or moral education. It had that similar double helix DNA running through it. So everyone was practicing academics plus character and well-being. So that was the first thing we noticed. And then the second thing was that these people were doing great work and getting really great results from Australia, China, Singapore, the US, and the UK, but they had never met before. So there was no governing body that was really bringing people together to share best resources, policy, and practice. And that was really why IPEN, the International Positive Education Network, was formed, to really be a kind of a big tent, as Marty likes to call it, to bring people together to have that united conversation about what education should look like.
I think a lot of schools may be practicing some version of this and not even know that they're part of a global movement. You were telling me off the air that you recently visited a school here in Dallas. Tell us what you observed.
Yeah, and so that's something I get all the time, actually, is people are just saying, wow, we've been practicing this for years and we just never knew what to call it. So that is one of the kind of purposes of IPEN is we have a name now, you have a movement, and you have people who are supporting you. And so we just visited Momentous Institute, which is an amazing school in South Dallas that's working with underprivileged students. And I kind of come from a research background. So walking into that school, I was so impressed. Everything they're doing is really based on empirically ground evidence. So they have an amazing gratitude tree where students can share what they're grateful for. But more than that, they have an implicit culture that really cultivates student well-being. And they've seen incredible results teaching empathy and mindfulness to students. They've had some really disadvantaged students who are now graduating high school at around a 95% rate and going on to get a 2-year degree at community college, and some going on to college as well.
A word that you used earlier I love is the word grit. And I think, in the society where often we give everyone a medal for showing up, the idea of falling down, skinning your knee, and then dusting yourself off and getting back up again is actually kind of a foreign concept to a lot of young people coming out of school. How does positive education address that?
Yeah, so grit is kind of pioneered by Angela Duckworth, who's a researcher at the University of Pennsylvania, and she just wrote a book called Grit. And so she's really kind of the leading expert in how to teach grit to students, and she will be speaking at the festival. So I think grit is something grit and resilience kind of go hand in hand. So we need to prepare students to fail and to overcome that and to have the tools they need to bounce back from adversity. So for me, it's really about teaching students that failure is normal, it's okay, setbacks are fine, and you need to be able to take that negative feedback, incorporate it, and then move forward. And I think that's something that a lot of maybe millennials haven't been able to do so well in the workplace.
I heard you talking to another radio host here in town about your own experience with a setback and that kind of shock. What were you saying?
Yeah, so obviously I belong to kind of the generation that everyone likes to talk about, the millennials and how they do in the workplace. And so I think when I first started working in, with IPEN and with the various jobs I had, my first job was actually living in rural Nepal. I was working with teachers and training them in positive education. And something that was really surprising is it's very different reading it and studying it in a textbook and then actually going to a village in Nepal and working with people. And so I had a lot of setbacks. I got a lot of, rejections or teachers who kind of didn't get it, didn't want to be a part of it. And I had to learn that, that's okay. That's actually part of the learning process. And I think if you adapt a growth mindset when you experience adversity or failure, you're able to really kind of, again, bounce back and be more resilient.
So what would your advice be to maybe teachers or educators listening to this broadcast right now if they want to start participating? I know some of them, to a certain degree, their hands are tied. They have to teach a certain curriculum. Is there a way for a teacher to slowly start bringing some positive education into the classroom, even if it's not in the textbook?
Absolutely. One of my favorite activities, and I start almost every lecture or talk I give, is the 3 good things. So this is about teaching gratitude and really changing the lens through which you view the world. So a lot of times we start class and all the kids come in and they're talking about, oh, this went wrong and this was so bad and the homework was awful. But as a teacher, you have the ability to really reframe the conversation. So you can start your class by saying, all right, you guys, I want you to think about 3 good things that happened to you this weekend or today and share with a partner. And what I've found is in giving talks that the energy in the room changes. So people, gratitude actually has been researched and it binds people together. You feel more connected with the people you're around. And it also starts changing the way that you're viewing your entire day because you start looking for the good things. So that's a simple activity you could do in your classroom tomorrow. But at the festival, I think our main focus is on giving teachers the tools they need to the very next day go into the classroom and in very small ways start changing that classroom environment.
And I think it's so necessary right now because in many schools it's a toxic workplace. You have teachers that don't feel like they have the resources. You have students with attitude. You have parents that don't back up the teacher if the student, talks back. So it seems like this idea is more necessary than ever.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought up teachers as well because a lot of times teachers face reform all the time. So every year they have a new training that they feel like is overburdening them and they need to revamp their whole curriculum, and there's so much pressure on them. So actually, I worked in the Philippines. I just got back a few months ago training 300 teachers, and I always like to start with just training them for their own well-being. So this isn't just for students because I don't think you can really have systematic change until teachers feel like they're flourishing and that their well-being is looked after. It's not just about students. It has to start with the teacher.
I loved the Robin Williams movie Dead Poets Society, and this kind of reminds me of that attitude where, he was teaching out of a textbook that really didn't allow the students to flourish. Did you see that movie? Do you know?
Yeah, we actually watched it when I was doing my master's in positive psychology.
And that was really what he was exemplifying, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Long before they had a name for it.
Yeah, and people, we like to say this is a new model of education based on classic ideals. So Socrates, Aristotle, they've all had these ideas before, but we're just putting the science behind it.
That's so awesome. Tell us more about the festival and how somebody can get a ticket.
Absolutely. So the festival, again, is July 18th to the 20th in Dallas, Texas. You can get day tickets if you're a teacher, you just want to come in for the day. You can go to our website, which is www.ipen-festival.com. We'd love to have everyone there, and we actually have really fun evening events. Rock T, who is local to Dallas, he's a radio host. He's going to be giving a talk on Tuesday night at 6:30 and also a step performance with some students. And we have a movie screening that's open to the public for $10 called Pursuing Happiness.
Awesome. I hope you'll come back on my show when you're back.
Absolutely. This is great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll be right back.
More of The Jeff Crilley Show